Now the snake was the most cunning of all the wild animals that the Lord God had made. He asked the woman, "Did God really say, 'You shall not eat from any of the trees in the garden'?" The woman answered the snake, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. It is only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, 'You shall not eat it or even touch it, or else you will die.'" But the snake said to the woman, "You certainly will not die. God knows well that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods, who know good and evil." In the second window of salvation history, we have depicted in here the fall. And from the book of Genesis, we realize that God created two trees in the garden. The first tree is the tree of life. The second tree is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And we see depicted in this window then the symbols of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, a serpent, and a lily. And we talk about the fall, as Father Mike mentioned in that first window, that all that God created was good, that God made man and woman to be good and to live a life pleasing to God. But if we take into account the fall of that temptation or trickery of man and woman, we come to understand that our sin was in part disobedience to God's will and design, but also the fact that we wanted to make ourselves out to be gods, to be equal to God, to have that knowledge of good and evil. And so our relationship was severed with God. Our relationship was severed between man and woman. And we see then in this window that God's plan for salvation comes through the person of Mary, in which Mary is depicted by a lily crushing the head of the serpent, crushing the head of the devil. And so it's through Jesus Christ, it's through this plan that God has revealed to us, in which we will achieve salvation. That left to our own devices, left on our own, we cannot achieve heaven. But with God's grace, with that turning away from sin, with that turning away of us choosing what is right and wrong, and seeking the wisdom and truth that comes from God, we will meet our Creator in heaven.